Can everyone hear me? Is everything working here?
You have no cover to your live stream. It's just the fly.
Alright, sorry about that. My crew's giving me a hard time. Is everything up and working, guys? Can you hear me? Is everything working here? I think it is. Alright, so if you all can hear me, we are here live for a kind of an impromptu live stream here. So this is not a landfall live stream. We're not seeing some imminent threat to land at the moment here. This is Hurricane Humberto in the southwest Atlantic Ocean, but we are here live today covering a potential upgrade here of Humberto to Category 5 status, which is going to happen within the next 34 minutes. Matthias R commenting, let's see if the NHC will do the trolling and not call Humberto a Cat 5. But anyway, so thank you for joining us here for this quick little live stream. We're going to watch and see here if Hurricane Humberto is going to make it to Cat 5 status. And the reason that's a big deal here today is because, of course, we've already had a Category 5 in the Atlantic this year. That was Hurricane Erin. Actually, she did it in a remarkably similar spot as to where we're seeing Humberto right now. And so we've already had a Category 5 this year. Certainly all satellite data and indications, right, everything we're looking at today, this has just been an incredible storm. Let me zoom in on the satellite imagery here. And this is a massive, or not a massive in size, I guess, but massive in power for sure. And extremely powerful. I mean, just look at that. Perfect central dense overcast, perfect eye. The last update from the NHC we got was almost 6 hours ago now, and that was 145 miles per hour, 938 millibars. That was the strength they gave Humberto. He has definitely intensified via satellite presentation since then, so that's why we're waiting here. And if he becomes a Category 5 officially, it certainly looks like he does, but if the National Hurricane Center officially upgrades this buzzsaw here to a Category 5, that will mean that we have had back-to-back hurricane seasons with multiple Category 5s in the Atlantic. Now, that because we had Milton and Beryl last year, right? That has not happened. That has not happened since 1932 and 1933. So that's how long it's been since we've had back-to-back years with multiple Category 5s. It's not official yet, but it looks so much like we have a Category 5 based on satellite data. And here I'll give you kind of a quadruple view, like of all the different satellite wavelengths you can possibly get here. And as you can see, by every metric, Hurricane Humberto is absolutely ferocious, visible. You can see that incredible sloping stadium effect into that compact but extremely clear. You can see all the way down to the ocean surface eye. Infrared looks crazy. Notice water vapor down here with the very dry eye, right? So this is dry air, not to be confused with these cold cloud tops, which also are kind of reddish orange on this wavelength. But yeah, so you can see that very dry eye that we've been looking at. Not as dry as Erin's, but nevertheless, just searing temperatures in there. Sinking air is pushing all the cloud tops and messiness away, and it's just a perfectly clear eye now. So this is just a crazy, crazy storm that has undergone really explosive intensification. 48 hours ago, Humberto was only a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm. So we could see, so it's not 24 hours, right? So it's not like Otis or Wilma or something like that, but this is still pretty crazy intensification that we have, 48 hours ago, a poorly disorganized 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm, and now we could be saying if the upgrade does come into Category 5 status, it will be 160 miles per hour. So that would be a 100 mile per hour increase in 48 hours. But as Matthias already joked about, it's possible we don't get the Category 5 upgrade, which kind of feels disappointing because and the problem is we don't have aircraft hurricane hunter reconnaissance in here, so we don't have we're not technically going to have like official measurements from within the storm, so we have to go by satellite data. And we've seen it before. You know, we saw it with a famous example, I think, would be Hurricane Sam in 2021, right? Where I think we all kind of felt like that was definitely Category 5. And that was the major consensus based on satellite data. And the National Hurricane Center, they did send recon in there, but recon was late to the peak intensity. So only sampled 155 miles per hour and 927 millibars, I believe, was the peak intensity for Sam. So Sam, a lot of people feel, was robbed of Category 5 intensity. Hopefully we don't see that here today with Humberto, because again, I think the major consensus, if you ask anyone and if you just look at the satellite images we're looking at right here, the consensus is Humberto is a Category 5 right now, but that's not official. So we're going to wait here for the National Hurricane Center update there on the top left corner of your screen. You can see the next update is no later than 29 minutes from now. Sometimes they come in a little bit early, so that's why I put in no later. So within the next 29 minutes. Resistor Sister commenting yes. I think to Matthias R's comment. Matthias R commenting every frame on every satellite imagery looks incredible, and in my opinion, it looks better than Aaron. Yeah, it's close. Humberto is still a compact storm, slightly bigger than Aaron, though. I mean, just look at that eye. This is incredible, guys. Just look at that thing. Look at the core. Earthiness reposted the stream. Thank you, Earthiness. So that's what we're waiting on here. Would certainly be very insane if we saw that Category 5 update. Because again, it would be the first... It would be the first time since 1932, 1933, the Great Depression, before World War II. That is the last time we had back-to-back hurricane seasons with 2 Category 5s. If Humberto's upgraded to a Category 5, this year we would have had Aaron and him, and then last year we had Beryl and Milton. First. Give me a second here. Just checking stuff. So yeah, this is just an perfect storm, right? Perfect circular eye. Definitely well below 938 millibars. We might not see Category 5 upgrade, right? So that's entirely possible still. Maybe the next NHC advisory only takes Humberto up to 155, and that's possible. That would be 2 miles per hour short of Category 5 intensity. But we're watching now, that's for sure. Davmar Flaw asking, "Are you Brian Norcross's son?" No, I'm not Brian Norcross's son. Matthias R saying, "Safe to say that we for sure dropped to the 910s in that eye, maybe even middle 900s." That is bold. Bold prediction by Matthias R. Holy moly. So you can see extremely cold cloud tops surrounding this absolute cylinder of an eye that can see all the way down. We can see all the way down to the ocean surface. Guys, it does not get it almost does not get better looking than this for a hurricane in the open Atlantic Ocean. Remember, we have to make the distinction between the open Atlantic and the Caribbean and the Gulf, because the Caribbean and the Gulf are the notorious areas where you see big time Category 5s historically. Don't see that as much like with this situation or like with Aaron earlier this year, where they happen in the open Atlantic, but here we are. In fact, Humberto, before he became a Category 5 back earlier during his initial intensification phase, he actually tied Hurricane Lee as the second fastest intensifying Atlantic hurricane outside of the Caribbean Sea or Gulf in recorded history. The only Atlantic hurricane in the open Atlantic that intensified faster than Lee and Humberto here was literally Aaron earlier this year. Not to mention, and this is something I'll pull up the archive satellite later here, but we're waiting for the update now. But remember, Aaron hit her peak intensity like almost in this exact same spot. Like Aaron was like right here when she hit her Category 5 peak intensity. That's crazy. It's basically almost the same location in the Southwest Atlantic. We've seen this sometimes with hurricane seasons where the most powerful storms of the year, there's a clustering effect, right? So think about 2005, right, where you have Katrina and Rita, both almost identical Cat 5 intensities out in the Gulf, and they basically took almost identical tracks to each other, really, right? They formed over the Bahamas, Katrina tracked across Florida, Rita went just beneath Florida, and then they both hit peak intensity over the Loop Current. Katrina hit New Orleans, Louisiana, or Mississippi technically, but eastern Louisiana, and then Rita hit western Louisiana, eastern Texas. So very similar tracks. Think about a more recent example, right? 2017, where you had Irma and Maria both come in as big time Category 5s from hitting Lesser Antilles from the east, which is rare, right? So they came in, hit the Lesser Antilles from the east, and then they both went, again, almost identical intensities. Irma 180, 914, Maria 175, 908, similar areas. And then you had 2020, where the two most powerful storms of the year happened in November, really close to each other, but they also tracked, again, their tracks were basically identical, right? I'm talking about Eta, Iota, both high-end Cat 4s, both came into Nicaragua. They made landfall like within, 20 miles of each other. It was absolutely nuts. So this is not uncommon here to see this clustering effect in one particular season, to see this clustering effect of the year's most powerful storms. And we're 100% seeing that play out right before our eyes, because Aaron was like right down here and Humberto's up here. And yeah, definitely from a standpoint, you're getting to a point where the symmetry, even though Aaron might have been more intense because of how dry and clear that Aaron's eye was, Aaron might still be more intense. Humberto does have like a better overall, I think, symmetry in the central dense overcast there. These extremely cold cloud tops, rocketing up into the atmosphere, negative 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So that is just a very uniform ring of cold thunderstorms. And it's very Cat 5-esque. It's very minimum high in Cat 4, but man, this just looks so much like a Category 5. This is everything you look for when you're trying to judge if a storm is actually Category 5 intensity or not. And then also the visible imagery is nuts, completely crazy. Look at the stadium effect. Look at the shadows of the sun as there begins to be sunset there out in the Southwest Atlantic. Looks like we've got another comment here. This is a really good comment, really big comment. So I'm going to pull it up big for a second here. From Blizzard, saying 100% with you on it's not official, so we can't call it a Category 5. However, solid ring of negative 75 degrees Celsius band of convection, that's what we were just pointing out there, right? Around a tightening eye, clear, nearly perfect circular eye is just something you do not see with a Category 4 hurricane. This is just my opinion, but I strongly am confident that this will be Category 5 status in the new NHC update. I'm sure you've heard this a lot, but I just wanted to be out there and say it. If I had to take a reasonable guess, I would estimate that, and then maybe as a continued comment, or maybe that was cut off. But overall, that's a good comment by Blizzard, and that is pretty much how we're feeling right now. Blizzard also has another comment. Let me scale this one back down. We'll have to wait for official confirmation, of course. Don't know if you saw my last message or if it was too long. Yeah, I think it might have been too long. I got most of it, but it was cut off right at the end. No advisory in yet, but we are within the next 15 minutes. So if Humberto is upgraded to Category 5, it would be the first time since 1932 and 33 that we had back-to-back Atlantic hurricane seasons with multiple Category 5 storms. And that is really crazy to think about. I think here's the rest of Blizzard's comment saying, estimate that it's between 160 and 170 miles per hour with a pressure of 915 to 920 millibars if I had to take a solid guess. That was the last part of my message. Yeah, Blizzard, I agree with your estimate. I definitely agree with what you just said there. I like that. I like that estimate. But again, sorry, I misread that. 20 minutes. We were within 20 minutes of the next National Hurricane Center advisory. Matthews are saying at least 270 kilometer per hour sustained winds in that eye wall. So crazy. And just look at that visible imagery. Off the charts crazy. Wow. And just the way you have the shadow of the sun so well defined in that stadium effect. How about take a look at this? Take a look at this. Let me play this. Oh man, this is almost as good a satellite presentation as you're ever going to get outside the Caribbean Sea or the Gulf. Bradley Walters Smith commenting, that's spectacular, beautiful. It is a good thing that this storm is not hitting land anywhere. And that's another interesting note too here, because earlier when we had Hurricane Aaron, we were talking about how Hurricane Aaron was one of only, like 3 Category 5 Atlantic hurricanes ever to never make landfall at any point during their trajectory. I think it might have only been the second. I think it might have only been the second, maybe. Matthias R. says, look at the mesosector and cyclonic WX is zoomed in. I posted that earlier. I can't show it here on stream, but I do have this is basically the same thing. This is the mesosector here on radar scope. But yeah, just it is incredible. There's no doubt about it. But anyway, so as I was saying, we had Hurricane Aaron this year, and what we were talking about with Aaron, an interesting fact about her is that she never made landfall at any point despite being a Category 5 hurricane. That was like only the second time that had happened in Atlantic hurricane history. And the only other Category 5 hurricane, the third time. The only other 2 Cat 5 hurricanes to do that, though, was Hurricane Lorenzo in 2019, didn't make landfall anywhere as a tropical cyclone. And then Hurricane Lee in 2023. Those storms didn't make landfall anywhere, and then you have Aaron not making landfall anywhere, and now you're going to see Humberto could make landfall in Bermuda, and even if he doesn't make landfall in Bermuda, could strongly affect them in a damaging way. But that won't constitute an official landfall, so more likely than not... And there it is, guys! There it is! Category 5. Hurricane Humberto is now a Category 5 hurricane with winds of 160 miles per hour. And what's the pressure? What's the pressure looking like? Pressure 925 millibars. There we go. History. History in the Atlantic Basin. Let me post that update. Unbelievable. The second Category 5 of the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season. Wow. Breaking news. Breaking news happening right now. Hurricane Humberto is the second Category 5 hurricane of 2025. Absolutely insane. 160 miles per hour. This is the new official National Hurricane Center update. 160 mile per hour sustained winds and a minimum pressure of 925 millibars. And there's the image right there. There's the image, and looks like we've got some responses. So Wad saying NHC Cat 5. Yep. Climate Crisis Believer reposted this stream. Evan Yard saying my best estimate would be 160, 165 miles per hour, 915 to 920 millibars. Well, there you go. There you go, Yard. We just got the official National Hurricane Center advisory in. The upgrade the update has upgraded Hurricane Humberto to 160 miles per hour and 925 millibars. Blizzard saying, I knew it! Yes. Breaking news right now. Blizzard also saying this will likely further strengthen, and I also feel like their estimate is slightly conservative, but at least we got Category 5 confirmation. Yes, that's definitely the important thing. All the data indicated we got a Category 5, so I'm really happy with the National Hurricane Center's decision here. Matthew S.R. still conservative, but whatever. We got another Category 5. Second one of the year, guys. Second one of the year after Hurricane Aaron. Let's look at infrared. Oh. What a beast. What a beast. Evan Yard saying if they had recon in there, they would definitely be finding lower pressures. Yeah, it's possible. For sure. That's a definite possibility. Matthews are commenting, if we get very lucky with the amount of fuel ahead of it, Humberto can pull an Irma and stay Cat 5 until recon arrives tomorrow. A high dream. That is a high dream. But we can dream. We can dream. And again, so Humberto here, again, is not expected to directly impact a landmass in all likelihood. Bermuda, you guys still got to watch out. For sure. You got to watch out in Bermuda, assuming no IOL replacement cycle or shear. So you still got to watch out in Bermuda for sure. And Humberto does not have to make a direct landfall over that island, right, over Bermuda, to create life-threatening impacts. So Bermuda still has to watch out, but all in all, hopefully this is just going to be a fish storm that we can admire for what he is, like we are right now. This is insane infrared imagery. There it is. Let's see how wide this eye is. So you're looking at approximately a 20-mile wide eye, so average. Pretty much in the average range of things. That is a 20-mile wide, 925 millibar eye right there. Whoa. Lizard asking, is that slightly non-perfect circular shape a sign of an EWRC or just a tightening core? Are you referring to the eye? Are you referring to the eye or the central dense overcast? Looking at it right now, I'm not seeing, like, this is pretty close to perfect. This is pretty darn close to perfect. So no, there's currently no, I'm sure, I think more likely than not, especially since this is a compact storm and Irma was like a once, honestly, in a generation kind of, yeah, he's saying the eye, okay, the eye. I think that's pretty close to almost perfectly circular. Matthews R adding, could be mesovortices in the eye wall. Yeah, that could be it too. I think I see what you're talking about. Are you talking about here? That is interesting. Like, what's going on here? And then here. A little bit of wrinkles? I don't know what's going on there exactly. But in terms of the eye, this is pretty much perfectly circular. The only way you're going to get more circular than this is if you go up to 180 miles per hour or something crazy like that. This is pretty darn close to perfect, though. This is pretty close to a perfect 20-mile wide, 925 millibar eye. Yeah, that is what he's talking about. Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. When I first saw it, I almost thought it was some sort of malfunction in the satellite data. It's these 2 points that we're kind of really zooming in on, looking at. Those are intriguing little features there that are kind of running constant, right? They're kind of going with the flow, literally. But right now, not an imminent sign of an eye wall replacement cycle. I have to check microwave imagery. There may be an imminent sign on microwave imagery, but as we're looking at it, not an imminent sign of an eye wall replacement cycle just based on satellite imagery. Yeah, Brian Maxwell commenting, those stationary features must have something to do with the angle of the satellite. That's what I was thinking when I first saw them, because they look too odd, right? They're spinning constant with the storm, so that, I don't know, maybe they're nothing. Evan Yard with a good question, asking, what would we look for in satellite imagery presentation to estimate that winds have increased further since the storm is already so strong? So that is a good question. So one of the things we look for, this central dense overcast right now is really perfect looking. So I'm not sure that it's going to, like, more powerful storms have colder central dense overcasts. Now this one's already got the circular part down. It's already really cold in terms of what you're going to get for an Atlantic hurricane at this latitude, right? To get much colder than this in a uniform ring, you would have to really be further south in latitude. So we're not going to really look for that. What we're going to look for to see if the winds are actually strengthening further, one of the best indications we have for that is water vapor imagery right here. So this is showing you, this water vapor imagery, low level, this is showing you how dry the eye is. And the hotter and drier an eye becomes, typically the more intense a hurricane is becoming, the lower the pressure is going. And of course, the lower the pressure goes, the higher the winds can go as well. So that is what I would be looking at the most in terms of seeing if Humberto tries to go upper level to 170 plus. That's going to be one of the main indicators we're looking for. And I agree with Brian Maxwell that I think that must be something to do with the angle of the satellite, these little imperfections here, because it looks like they're just traveling along with the rotation of the eye wall. And that's not usually what happens when you have true imperfections. Usually they Usually they travel along with the rotation of the eye wall. Bradley Walter Smith commenting, I hope there's no ships caught in that thing. Yeah, probably not. Nowadays ships have a pretty good, with GPS, but just overall modern communication, satellite imagery, all that stuff. Ships are pretty good at avoiding storms like this. They're pretty good at it. Now, that didn't used to be true back in the 1930s, the era where that's the last time we had back-to-back hurricane seasons with multiple Category 5s was the 1932 and 1933 season. And back then, the ships did not have as good as communication and obviously they didn't have satellite data. They didn't have, so back then in the 30s, ships really did get caught in the eye walls of hurricanes, sometimes Category 5 hurricanes, and that brought great peril to them, for sure. So that happened a lot back in the day, not as much nowadays. I think the last example of a major ship getting caught in the eye wall of a major hurricane and it resulting in some devastating outcome was that SS El Faro back in 2015 somehow got caught in the eye wall of Hurricane Joaquin and sunk near the Bahamas. Yeah, Brian Maxwell saying those features are too stationary to be anything other than satellite related. Yeah, so I wouldn't look too much into those, guys. I think those are just satellite features, not anything to do with the hurricane. I think we're pretty much looking at the pinnacle of perfection for an Atlantic hurricane, and I'm going to do visible because, my goodness, just jaw-dropping imagery there. You can see the stadium effect perfectly. Again, the eyes in shadow, perfectly clear. You can see all the way through it. You can see mesovortices in there, too. You can see the cold convection of the eye wall and the central dense overcast just rippling with raw power right now. Oh, man. Blizzard saying, did you see the National Hurricane Center forecast cone? 167 mile per hour winds, which would round to 165. So they're forecasting further strengthening for Humberto. Oh, yeah. Look at that. So the National Hurricane Center actually forecasting further strengthening with Humberto to 165 miles per hour with gusts up to 200 miles per hour, potentially. So further strengthening is expected at this time, and that wouldn't be too surprising at all, given what we're seeing now and given that Humberto has favorable conditions ahead of him. Brian Maxwell with another good comment. Cloud top temperatures can be misleading sometimes. Dorian didn't have very cold cloud tops, but it was 185 miles per hour. Yes, a famous example of an upper tier hurricane maxing out the potential strength an Atlantic storm can become and not having tremendously cold cloud tops, which is not uncommon outside of the Caribbean. To get those colder, crazy cloud tops like Ada, for example, that usually happens further south in the deep tropics. These right here, like Dorian and Humberto here, they are high latitude open Atlantic hurricanes. So not at all surprising. This is about the cloud top temperatures we would expect. Mary Zavitka coming in, commenting, I used to live in Jacksonville, Florida. I left after Matthew in 2016. Sean is back saying hello. Hello, Sean. We are looking at an open ocean Category 5 storm here out in the Atlantic today. Usually we restrict our live streams to major landfalls, but in this case we made an exception because it was just too historic and these satellite images are just too crazy not to live stream for, at least for a little bit. So again, thank you everyone for joining us, watching, commenting, and also liking the stream. 7 likes. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Let's see what Blizzard has to say. With Humberto defying forecast so far, 175 miles per hour wouldn't be too unreasonable for a peak intensity if the eye tightens even further. I don't disagree with that. I think I think it's less likely than not just because of historical precedent says we haven't, like, have we gotten a Category 5 hurricane of 175 miles per hour that far? So I'll keep this here. I'll go back to windy real quick. Oh, so formidable. So formidable. So this is the... Oh, yeah, that wouldn't be unreasonable. That wouldn't be unreasonable at all. Yeah, so like we're talking about, with these higher latitude Atlantic hurricanes, even the Category 5s, it's not unusual and, in fact, more typical to see warmer cloud tops. And I say warmer with the kind of caveat that, I mean, these are still incredibly cold, incredibly uniform, negative 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Very, very symmetrical storm. But in terms of like getting to the like negative 120 Fahrenheit, negative 130 Fahrenheit that you often see in West Pacific typhoons, for example, you can see that in Atlantic hurricanes, but usually that happens further south in the Caribbean. And if you think about it, like Brian Maxwell said, the cloud top temperatures not being quite that cold can be misleading because, of course, you had Dorian, and Dorian was at this latitude when he hit 185 mile per hour sustained winds. So Humberto could definitely become 175 miles per hour. It all depends on if his core is willing to do that at this point, right? We're not expecting shear to come in. We're not expecting cold water temperatures to end this party of intensification. So if anything happens, it will be in the form of internal dynamics, right? Eyewall replacement cycles. The storm not able to get himself to that strength, even though the conditions allow for such. But it doesn't get much more insane than this, right? Dorian is the more insane scenario for the open Atlantic, but it doesn't get much more insane than this. So you're just one level below Dorian right now. And you can see that is wide out in the open Atlantic Ocean, not in the Gulf, not in the Caribbean. That's not... Wow, 10 likes. Wow. Awesome, awesome. So cool that we've got so many people in here coming in to watch this live stream. Sean asking this impromptu live stream for an open ocean storm. But you know what? Sometimes you have to appreciate these things and be glad that they're not hitting land. It is very rare, actually, historically, for Category 5 Atlantic hurricanes to never make landfall anywhere. So even though Bermuda is under threat, hugely lucky that we're not seeing Humberto make landfall anywhere, especially not at this intensity. Sean is asking, is Humberto now a Category 5? Yep, Sean, we just got the official update, the official upgrade in from the National Hurricane Center. 160 mile per hour sustained winds and a pressure of 925 millibars. Blizzard's severe weather coverage, adding not this year, but last year Milton reached 180 miles per hour, 895 millibars. Yep. Don't think we're going to see something that crazy. But Humberto definitely showing off here today. What a weird hurricane season, right? It has been a weird one. We have had a lot of junk. We've had a lot of junk storms. And then we had Gabrielle attain Category 4 intensity way up north, one of the most northerly Category 4 hurricanes we've ever seen in the Atlantic. And now here we have the second Category 5 of the season. Has not at all been a high-impact season so far, which is good. This is really what we like to see, right? We like an Atlantic hurricane season where we get multiple Category 5s out in the open ocean, but we don't have them or any other storms doing major damage to land masses. The hurricane season's not over. We still have October and November. And during October and November, the climatology shifts away from these open ocean Atlantic storms and more towards the Caribbean or Gulf. And anytime a storm gets into the Caribbean or Gulf, there's nowhere it can go without making landfall somewhere. So Matthias R. saying it's traveling over 30 Celsius waters. Yep. But anyway, yeah, like I was saying, this is really the optimal, what you like to see if you're a hurricane nerd. This is what you like to see. Look at that zoom out. What you like to see, because you can track these storms out here and be glad that they're not hitting land anywhere. Brian Maxwell asking, could you DM me after your live stream, please? A friend of mine who is a TV meteorologist wants to have you in his really cool tropical weather chat group if you're interested, Brian Maxwell. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll send you one over, Brian. I'll send you a DM after this stream. Blizzard severe weather coverage asking, you can refer to me as Blizzard if you want. Same person commenting from X, but I switched to YouTube. Ah, okay, I didn't realize that, but I wondered. I was like, it's the same user, right? All right, Blizzard. And what's going on right now is a blizzard of convection just racing around that perfect 925 millibar eye. A blizzard of whiteout conditions for sure in that 160 mile per hour eye wall of Hurricane Humberto. We were here for the update, guys. First time since the early 1930s now that we've had back-to-back hurricane seasons with multiple Category 5s. Insanity. Just cannot stop looking at this visible imagery right now. This is a big wow, and just the pure symmetry of Humberto is so impressive. Whether you're talking about the eye or the eye wall, or just really the whole thing. And infrared is every bit as insane as visible is. Getting some very high definition satellite images here from GOES. Wow. Brian Maxwell asking, have we had 3 Cat 5s in a season? I think we have, but not 4, right? Actually, the only hurricane season to have 3 Category 5s was a season with 4 Category 5s, and that, of course, was the infamous 2005 Atlantic hurricane season. Oh, you know what? I can do that. Here, I don't need my phone. So, Brian Maxwell, actually, yes, we have had a hurricane season before with 4 Category 5 hurricanes single year. And that was 2005. So the first one was Hurricane Emily, Category 5. The earliest Category 5 at the time in Atlantic history until she was surpassed by Hurricane Beryl last year. So there was Emily, reached Category 5 intensity here on July 17th, 2005. So that was 1. And then, of course, who can forget? Katrina, the ultimate catastrophe. She became Cat 5 on August 28th. We just had the 20th anniversary of Katrina and of the whole 2005 hurricane season period. Katrina peaking out at 902 millibars, so that's 2. Then you had Rita, almost identical. So again, I was talking about this earlier, right? We're now seeing Humberto this year attain Category 5 intensity in almost the exact same spot as Aaron did. Well, here in 2005, you had Rita attain Cat 5 intensity almost the same. Rita went down to 895, so a little bit more intense, a little bit stronger than Katrina, but almost the same. And as you can see, that's almost identical to Katrina's path, formation, peak intensity location, landfall location. Really mimic storms of each other. But anyway, that's 3. And then 2005 certainly saved the best for last with Wilma, whom to this day, Western Caribbean storm, to this day stands as the most intense Atlantic hurricane in recorded history with a minimum pressure of 882 millibars. So that's the year that is the only year we had more than 2 Cat 5s. That's the only year we've had more than 2 Cat 5s in the Atlantic. We had 4. Evan Yard asking, do you think this could be a long-lived high-end Cat 4 storm like Hurricane Sam? And the potential is always there anytime you get a Category 5 or very close to it out in the open Atlantic. Let's pull up the cone. So here's the cone of Hurricane Humberto, of now Category 5. Hurricane Humberto. So there you see the potential is definitely there because he's not going due north. He's curving out through the southwest Atlantic Ocean, and there you can see why I was talking about Bermuda earlier. Bermuda is on the very innermost, or I guess easternmost edge of the cone. So Bermuda could face a direct landfall if Humberto takes the absolute eastern edge of his cone at this time. Definitely pay attention there in Bermuda to see where the models trend, where the direction of the storm is going. If we see a difference here in track, if there's a northward shift, maybe an eastward shift, but yeah, so Bermuda not out of the crosshairs, but in terms of could we see like this huge ace producer that stays at Category 4 intensity for a long time? I think that might be more likely than not, unless Humberto's small size or small to average size leads him into some sort of epic structural collapse. But at this point, looking like probably a long-lived Cat 4 even after he's down from his peak, which he's at right now. Also want a quick note that... Oh, and look at sunset. Look at sunset! Oh. Hurricanes on visible imagery are no different than looking at the moon through a telescope. It's so much more interesting when you're looking at the barrier, when you have shadows, right? So at the point where there's sunlight and when there's not. Always more interesting than when the sunlight is just blasting the moon's surface straight on. Everything kind of looks flat. It's the same thing with hurricanes. It's when you get sunrise and sunset, and you have that 3D shadow effect. So ominous. Look at that, going to sunset. Sean asking, is there going to be another hurricane? So this is the other thing, right? We're trying Hurricane Humberto and just marveling at him on this stream, but we do have to talk about the fact that we have other shenanigans going on, not just in the Atlantic Basin, but across the world. So, of course, the big headline is Humberto absolutely rages out here. Looks like this is frozen, so let me reload it. So as Humberto rages out here with absolute... And guys, I think this is getting more perfect. Look at this. This is still an intensifying storm. Holy moly. Look at that. Yeah, this storm is still intensifying. But here we have potential tropical cyclone 9. Much less impressive, fortunately, than her companion Hurricane Humberto. And 9 here is a potential threat to the east coast, the southeast coast of the United States. So if we go to the homepage of the National Hurricane Center here, there you can see Humberto and 9. And 9 here is forecast. We'll do this one because it's interactive. Future Imelda. Oh, Tropical Depression 9. Sorry, no longer a potential tropical cyclone. It's now Tropical Depression 9. But 9 here is supposed to become Tropical Storm Imelda and then Hurricane Imelda, but the trend has been friendly. So 2 days ago, we were looking at a potential flood disaster, looked like it, in South Carolina because it looked like future Imelda was going to come up, potentially make landfall, get very close to making landfall in South Carolina, and then kind of stall and erratically meander around and dump huge amounts of rainfall in the Carolinas and potentially even Georgia too. But that has changed now. And lately today, the trend has been very friendly with a cone that, I mean, look at that. This kind of reminds me of Dorian in the way that you have a storm like coming in, and then right before she gets close to land, just literally just stops dead and is going to suddenly turn around out to sea, almost like the storm is conforming with the actual shape of the coastline. So that's really wild stuff there. But yeah, so the trend has definitely been our friend with future Imelda. We do have tropical storm watches in effect for the east coast of Florida, but at this time not expecting a direct landfall in the United States anymore. And while there's still a lot of chaos introduced by the presence of Humberto here, right? It's Humberto that's going to be influencing a lot of what future Imelda does as both storms kind of converge a little bit in the Southwest Atlantic. But the trend has been our friend here today, and here are the track guidance, the model ensembles for future Imelda. And while you still have some members doing a crazy west turn into Georgia, you can see now very suddenly the vast majority of members are taking this system out to sea. Doesn't mean there's not going to be impacts in the United States, right? You got to watch for the rain bands. Rain bands can still train over some areas and create heavy rainfall, maybe some localized flooding, gusty winds, right? Down trees, always a threat. Rip currents, coastal surge, it's all possible, especially if future Imelda becomes a hurricane. But yeah, it's been a really radical but very nice to see trend away from a landfall and more to an out to sea tract. Thank you, Humberto. So that's Tropical Depression 9 and Humberto simultaneously, and not to take away from Humberto very much at all. We have Hurricane Nard out here in the Pacific. We also have Typhoon Neoguri. Yeah, Neoguri still hanging around. Look at this thing. Look at that little shrimpy storm up there, right? Neoguri still hanging around days later. As for context, Neoguri was doing her thing while we still were tracking Typhoon Regasa as she hit the Philippines. And here you see so many days later, Neoguri still rocking and rolling out there. But then this is a storm that we might do another live stream for, because this is a storm that is closing in on landfall at some point. This is Typhoon Buoloy, also known as Opong in the Philippines. And Buoloy just went through the Philippines, and even though he was stated as a tropical storm or low-end Category 1 typhoon, did some pretty bad damage to certain areas in the Philippines, and now is coming in, lots of convection firing near the center, and could be a reasonably serious storm. There we go, turn off lightning. Big lightning burst here near Buoloy Center. Could be a reasonably serious storm for north-central Vietnam, and has had his forecasted ceiling for strength kind of come up because his track is trending a bit more northerly, and he's getting further up into north-central Vietnam. So that's what we're tracking to. Might have a live stream for Buoloy there, so stay tuned for that. That's a landfall live stream. This is not a landfall live stream. But anyway, back to Humberto here, and to a couple more of our questions. Blizzard saying the fact that the only 3 hurricanes this year were all Category 4 plus, and 2 of them being Category 5 just blows my mind. That's another record actually going back to the 30s Blizzard. This is the first time since 1935 where the first 3 hurricanes of the season have all been Category 4 or higher storms. So that is really crazy. It's like been a boom or bust year. You either get a really crappy tropical storm this year, or you get a full-on Cat 4 or Cat 5, because Gabrielle was not a laugher either, right? Gabrielle was pretty intense too. Mid-range Category 4, 145 miles per hour peak intensity. So that's nothing to sneeze at. So we've had 3 extremely powerful hurricanes for the first 3 hurricanes of the year. And that is a record that traces all the way back to 1935. And keep in mind, 1935, we didn't have satellite imagery, right? So what are the odds that that was actually the case in 1935? How easily could it have been missed, right? All it would have taken was some sort of weak Cat 1 or 2 out in the middle of the Atlantic, because we didn't have satellite imagery back then. How much would it take for that to get missed? And so that would break the streak. And potentially looking at something that we haven't seen maybe in over 90 years, where the first 3 hurricanes of the season are all extreme Category 4 plus, and the first 2 are Category 5s. I have to probably go back a long time, even hypothetically, to find that scenario where 2 of the first 3 hurricanes were both Category 5s. Maybe it's happened. I don't know. I'm going to have to look at that record. Tornado Clips reposted the stream. Thank you, Tornado Clips. Juan Sanchez asking, sorry for the dumb question, and it doesn't look like a dumb question, but what is causing recent hurricanes to move to the west and avoiding the Gulf or the United States? So it's not a recent trend, actually, Juan. It is usually what happens. Now, while it's rare to see Category 5s, right, it's very rare to see Category 5s not make landfall anywhere. It is not at all rare for storms in Humberto's position here in the southwest Atlantic, a storm that originated from the west coast of Africa. It is not unusual at all for these major storms to go west, and then curve away in this. It's almost like there's an alley, like a roadway between Bermuda and the U.S., and a bunch of them kind of take this alley and recurve away. Not unusual. In fact, most main development major hurricanes do exactly that. The majority of hurricanes that come off of West Africa, especially major hurricanes, curve away and don't make landfall in the United States. What makes this more interesting is that we do have, this is a Category 5, and that's obviously a lot different because Category 5s, as I was discussing earlier, we've only had, now this is going to be the 4th, unless there's a crazy hit on Bermuda, this is only going to be the 4th Category 5 ever recorded that didn't make landfall anywhere. Lorenzo was the first in 2019, Lee was the second in 2023, and Aaron just this year was the third. So you're definitely seeing a trend there, and I can't really speak to why that trend is happening, other than in the last couple of years, we've seemed to see a shift of activity away from the Caribbean with the really powerful storms where we would normally historically see them, and they've kind of shifted away towards the open Atlantic. That kind of really started with Hurricane Irma, right? When Irma came in at 180 miles per hour in the open Atlantic, that had never been seen before. That was a record in the open Atlantic, and a Category 5 had also never made landfall in the Leeward Islands down here at Category 5 intensity. Irma broke that record. And then only 2 years later, Dorian broke Irma's record by going 185 in the open Atlantic, right? So Dorian's now the strongest storm we've ever seen outside of the Caribbean or Gulf. And we've just had a litany of super powerful storms that were outside of the usual areas, right? The Gulf has still been active with Helene, Milton, Michael, Harvey, Laura, Ida, you name it. So the Gulf is doing just fine. But the way we've seen this peculiar shift in activity where the big Cat 5s and the big powerful storms are happening north of the Caribbean rather than in the Caribbean, and not that there's something also happening in the Caribbean, like there's nothing happening down there. It has been really dead, and 2020 is really the only season where you can say it was a bit more normal because you had Delta and Eta and Iota and all were Cat 4s down there in the Caribbean. That's really the only year that it was more normal. All these other years in this active period, it's been very strange. And Humberto once again proving that by becoming a Category 5, just an insane Category 5 storm. Just look at the rippling of that 160 mile per hour eye wall as we go into sunset here. This, you cannot take satellite imagery like this for granted. This only comes around every now and again. Just past our first hour of live streaming. We're not going to go forever. We're not going to go too much longer. But thank you everyone for joining us so far, for being with us here, watching the historic upgrade of Hurricane Humberto to Category 5 status. Looked like that was going to happen, so we went live for it. And indeed, we got official confirmation from the National Hurricane Center. So thank you for everyone watching this on both X and YouTube. We've got 11 likes on the YouTube stream. That's super cool. Blizzard saying, and I think this relates back to the Hurricane Wilma comment. We were talking about Hurricane Wilma earlier. Blizzard saying 882 millibars was recorded by hurricane hunters, just barely missed the eye, and the pressure was still falling when their mission was done. Or so I've heard. No idea how true that is. Yeah, I've got to look into that as well. I actually haven't been as in tune to Hurricane Wilma miss peak theories as maybe some other storms. News in Context reposted this stream. Thank you, News in Context. Sean asking, is Humberto the strongest? In what context, Sean? Strongest? I mean, it's not the strongest storm this year yet. Now, if Humberto goes 165 miles per hour, then he will surpass Aaron as the strongest hurricane of the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season by wind speed. Now, to beat Aaron in terms of intensity, he will have to go down another 11 millibars, which is pretty steep, but I guess possible if we don't see an imminent eyewall replacement cycle. So he's going to have to go down to 914 or lower to actually surpass Aaron. Needless to say, if we get 2 Category 5 hurricanes this year that both go below 915 millibars, that is really insane. That's like 2017 level stuff. Sean also got asking, where is he heading? Back perch. And I'll show you. Here's the cone. This is not the cone of Humberto. Here's the cone of Humberto. The only landmass he could be potentially threatening is Bermuda. Other than that, he is a pure fish storm. Blizzard saying, bro is making a run for the strongest intensity of his life. No doubt about it. And when we're looking at the near-term trends to see if Humberto can continue getting stronger, if he can go to 165 to surpass Aaron's wind speeds, but maybe even go to 175, we will see. We will see. But right now, there are no signs of an eyewall replacement cycle yet. I think we probably will have one at some point, maybe later tonight, but no signs of it yet. That little imperfection in the eye, I think we've kind of settled and agreed that imperfection is a little bit of a satellite-based. I think that's a satellite-based error. I don't think that's intrinsic to the storm. And right now, perfect eye, perfect CDO, no weaknesses. The cloud tops are cold. They're completely uniform. When you have this perfect circle, right? That's what you look for when you have this perfect circle. And then, of course, the perfectly circular eye, the perfectly circular eye wall surrounding that very closely. Humberto is firing on all cylinders right now. So no signs of weakening yet. Brian responding to Juan's question about why do these storms keep curving away, and Brian responding, good question, Juan, probably just all the troughing over the east coast of the U.S. Yeah, that's the other thing, too. Like, yes, most storms, most major Cape Verde hurricanes do curve away. But we are in it is needless to say that we are in a particularly strange time right now where we haven't had a major hurricane landfall on the East Coast, anywhere on the East Coast of the United States, including Florida, since Hurricane Jeanne in 2004. So we're now over 20 years since our last major hurricane landfall. We've had some come close, but Dorian stopped, turned away, and then what was the other one? My mind is blank. Florence, the year before Dorian, looked like she was going to come in as maybe even a Category 4. A lot of models and forecasts had Florence coming in as a Category 4, but alas, when she made landfall, she had really degraded in intensity, come all the way down to a Category 1. A lot of upwelling, a lot of dry air that affected Florence. But yeah, this is just an incredible hurricane. Those rippling cloud tops, you can literally see the gravity waves going through there. All very uniform with the getting up to negative 105 degrees Fahrenheit. So very uniform, very healthy. That kind of swirling whirlpool effect with the gravity waves emanating through the central dense overcast. And again, that is just a perfect 20 mile wide eye you're looking at right there. Sean asking, what if it does not turn like forecast? It's pretty certain that Humberto is going to turn. This is not a storm where there's like much uncertainty and there's a chance, really at all, any realistic chance that Humberto is going to do something unexpected. Here, if I go to Tropical Tidbits and I go to Humberto, and you see the model ensembles, here you can see, Sean, that there is pretty much zero chance, pretty much as close as you're going to get to a zero chance of Humberto not making that turn and like hitting the United States. That is not going to happen. This is pretty much, yeah, so this is as solid as you can possibly get. There is a 0% chance that Humberto does not make that turn. Blizzard. Oh, so Blizzard's commenting from Nova Scotia. That's cool. Nova Scotia does get their fair share of remnant storms. Blizzard saying, let me actually go back to this imagery. Blizzard saying, we need a tropical system or at least good sustained rainfall here in Nova Scotia. Drought is nearing D4 exceptional drought status, and our precipitation deficit is around 12 to 13 inches since May 1st. Hey, I hear you, Blizzard. I'm here in South Texas. It is a desert down here, and we get exceptional drought a lot, multiple times per year, every year. So I definitely hear you on that one. Blizzard also saying adding tropical system would significantly reduce the drought code values, which is around 500 to 600 in most parts of the province. Yep. Unfortunately, Humberto not going to hit Nova Scotia. Again, pretty much 100% chance this is going to be a pure fish storm unless a crazy east shift happens, and models don't even seem to think that Bermuda is going to take a direct hit. So Shudo's Roots commenting from X, we still have to worry about a huge storm, so heavy rainfall from traditional hurricanes and tropical storms would be a flooding concern for the Carolinas. Shudo going back and referencing Imelda, future Imelda here. Spinning, or not really spinning yet at all. We're kind of meandering around. There's Humberto right there. And yeah, we're looking at that Shudo. We're definitely going to be watching, keeping an eye on future Imelda closely. Going to be covering that extensively on X, on our feed, at Backperch Crew on X. But we have seen a good recent trend with, so here are Humberto's ensembles showing him to be a fish storm. I mean, unless maybe you consider a landfall over Iceland or Ireland as an extratropical system. But other than that, Humberto's a fish storm. And then we have seen a very strong decrease in possibility for future Imelda to make landfall in the United States. As you can see, these recent... Now, because Humberto's there, right? Because we have such a crazy degree of uncertainty because these two systems are interacting, this is not yet set in stone at all. And based on the reconnaissance data from earlier, I mean, 9 future Imelda, barely a tropical depression, not a very well-organized storm whatsoever. So still a lot of uncertainty, not a super well-defined core. We'll have to watch it, but at least for now, the trend has been good. And that sort of scenario, like you saw there, that sort of track would limit the heavy rainfall and keep it offshore. Just offshore of the Carolinas, which is good. We don't want the rainfall over land. There we go. Sunset here now. Sunset here now on Hurricane Humberto. And as we also get to sunset here on this stream, but what a crazy stream it was. I'll get to the last couple questions here. Sean saying, what might happen if Humberto did not have a path staying out at sea? Well, I mean, you can hypothetically take into account that if Humberto was not going out to sea, so hypothetically, if Humberto was going straight towards the United States, right? If this was, you're right, if this were, we were talking about the cone heading due west, northwest, and we were going to see a landfall on the East Coast, it would be bad. I think based on the fact that you had Category 5 out here, if his structural dynamics hypothetically held up, he could have made landfall on the East Coast is a Cat 3, maybe a Cat 4. It totally depends. Like, there's so many different scenarios, right? Would he make landfall in Florida? Would he make landfall in the Carolinas? That would definitely influence how strong he would hypothetically be able to get to exactly. So you can certainly muse on some of those, but kind of a hypothetical here because Humberto is definitely not going to hit land. Brian Maxwell saying thanks for the live stream. Yeah, no problem. We were going to do this impromptu thing, and we got quite a few people watching here for this little impromptu live stream. Again, we only usually do them for landfalls, but because this was such a historic event, we were like, all right, we might as well go for landfall for this. And just to share this in real time, some of the satellite imagery, so insane here. And as we go into a sunset, it only gets crazier. That's as good as it gets for an open Atlantic storm, guys. Christopher Campfield commenting, Hurricane Humberto will get stronger when D-Max kicks in. Yeah, so we're heading up on that pretty quickly. So, hey, we're going to continue to cover this on our X feed at Back Perch Crew. So follow us there and keep watching our posts for there for further updates about Humberto, because we're going to be covering this. We're going to be very intent on seeing whether or not Humberto becomes a stronger Category 5. Shudo's Roots commenting those gravity waves in the CDO is just, wow, perfect healthy outflow. Absolutely. Stunning storm. Person. Great username. Person commenting, if Humberto keeps up this intensification, he can very much become stronger than Milton. Ooh, bold. Very bold, person. Very bold prediction. We shall see. Blizzard saying, I think that's a bit of a stretch. Something major would have to change. So he's replying to person there. Yeah, 180 would be 180, and anything below 900 millibars, I think would be, it would be unprecedented. I could say for certain that would be absolutely unprecedented if Humberto does that. So more unlikely than likely. Probably not going to see a strength comparable to Milton because we're in the open Atlantic. We're not in the Gulf. We're not in the Caribbean. We are in the open Atlantic, and there is a cap eventually to the storm strength. So that would be unprecedented. Not impossible, maybe, but certainly something that's never before been seen. Christopher Campbell talking about Hurricane Matthew coming close to, I guess maybe going closer to Milton strength is what he's referring to there, but got too close to South America. Shooter's Root saying the one that's difficult to forecast is Imelda, but thankfully most models are steering her out to open sea. Yep, that has been the good trend that we've gotten lately. Blizzard talking about up in Nova Scotia said we suffered from the Long Lake wildfire this year, which grew to around 20,000 acres in size, and we're a small province. We didn't know how to handle wildfires. LOL. Yikes. Wildfires are not fun. Blizzard also saying, I just measured on WeatherWise, and the hurricane's eye seems to have tightened to around 18.9 miles. However, this could just be, it's a different app. Yeah, we can check it. And also measuring the eye here, like without recon, we are really just approximating it. Because satellite imagery, even though it's really crisp and high definition right now, it is still kind of an approximation. Press the wrong button. Yeah, maybe. Maybe. If we start to see the eye contract too much, and this is something I've seen a lot over the years, if we start to see the eye contract too much, that is a sign of an eye wall replacement cycle, but a minor contraction like that, maybe a little bit, a few miles smaller, that is a sign maybe of further strengthening here. And also a sign of further strengthening is the fact that there is so much lightning activity in the eye wall, particularly the southern eye wall, maybe cooling down a bit in the last few frames, but look at all that lightning activity there. Huge clusters of lightning activity, so that implies intensification still ongoing. Alessandro Belvedere commenting from Bermuda saying, how close do you think this will come to us here in Bermuda? Very good question. Definitely pay attention to all official forecasts, right? Always watch for the National Hurricane Center's latest updates. Alessandro, at this moment in time, Bermuda is still inside the cone. So that means they could face a direct landfall from Humberto. However, even if they don't, life-threatening conditions, especially in the form of like surf, rip currents, maybe some strong winds, maybe some heavy rainfall. That's also possible, even if Humberto does not make a direct landfall over the island of Bermuda. So keep watching. The good news at this moment is that most of these model ensemble members do show Humberto missing Bermuda and curving to the island's north, but it's a close one. So keep watching. Yep. So I think with that, as we close out here with this crazy shot of all the lightning and Hurricane Humberto's southern eyewall, we are going to wind down this live stream. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us here for the historic upgrade. We saw it happen in real time, so if you want to go and look back at that moment, you can just rewind the live stream. It happened about, I think, 30, 40-ish minutes into it, or maybe 20, 30 minutes closer to that. We saw a historic upgrade of Hurricane Humberto to a Category 5 winds of 160 miles per hour and a pressure of 925 millibars. This makes 2025 officially, 2024-2025 officially, just the second time in Atlantic hurricane history where we've had back-to-back hurricane seasons with multiple Category 5s, Beryl and Milton last year, and Aaron and Humberto this year. And the National Hurricane Center is saying that Humberto could get stronger, could get even stronger than Aaron, and may even get more intense. That's something we're going to have to watch closely, and we're going to be covering this all night long. The next National Hurricane Center advisory comes out in about 5 hours, so stay tuned for that. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Back Perch Weather Live for more live coverage streams like this. Usually we live stream for big damaging landfalls somewhere in the world, anywhere in the world, right? Not just in the Atlantic, but in the Pacific and the Indian Ocean, in every basin in the world. But we did go live here today, and we will go live occasionally if we have storms, even if they're out in the open ocean doing some crazy intensification like we've seen with Humberto today, and just to talk about, nerd out about the crazy satellite imagery we are seeing. And then, of course, follow us at Back Perch Crew on X. That's where we post most of our updates and where we'll continue our live coverage, live in terms of, posted updates of Hurricane Humberto here as he churns in the Southwest Atlantic and continues to just absolutely bomb out. And also, as a note, we may be going live soon for the landfall of Typhoon Boualoy in Vietnam. Depends if Boualoy, if he goes to a high in Category 2 or Category 3, then we're going to be going live on both X and YouTube for coverage of that. So stay tuned there. Blizzard saying thank you for the stream. Thank you for commenting, Blizzard. And he's adding, we'll definitely be here for the next one. Awesome. Yeah, the next one might be not even related to Humberto. We'll certainly look at Humberto if he's still doing crazy things in the Atlantic. But the next one might be centered around Typhoon Boualoy's landfall in Vietnam, which is coming up here pretty soon. Wow, just look at all that lightning. All right, so with that, we'll close it out. Thank you, everyone, for watching, liking, and commenting on the stream, and we will see you again soon.